Okay, are we live now?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning and welcome to North Tyneside Council's Planning Committee meeting. I'm Frank Lott, the councillor who has the honour of chairing this planning committee. The meeting is being streamed live on the council's YouTube channel to enable members of the press and public to observe the meeting, and I welcome anyone who's watching. Before we move on to the agenda, I would first like to make it clear who's taking part in the meeting and explain how we intend to conduct the meeting. In order to check who's in the meeting, I'd like to ask everyone present to confirm their attendance. I'll do this first by calling out the names of the members of the committee. After I call your name, could you please turn on your microphone and camera and introduce yourself so we know you can be seen and heard. But then can you switch your camera and microphone off if you can do so? Councillor Ken Barry.
That's Councillor Ken Barry, Councillor for Colour Codes.
Thank you. Councillor Trish Brady.
Councillor Trish Brady, Deputy Chair of this committee.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Burdis. Councillor Linda Dark.
Yes, Councillor Linda Dark here.
Councillor Sandra Graham.
Councillor Sandra Graham here.
Has Carl Johnson joined us yet?
Have, Chair, substituting for Paul Richardson.
Thank you very much. Councillor Willie Samuel.
Due to some technical difficulties, it took me a while, but I'm here now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor John Sterling. And Councillor Francis Wheatman.
Hi, I'm Councillor Francis Wheatman, Councillor for Tynemouth.
Thank you. Now, also present are a number of officers. Now I invite them to introduce themselves and the capacity in which they're here at the meeting. Can we go through a similar exercise then? Julie Lawson.
Chair, before you start, Muriel Green, present and correct, you didn't call me.
I apologise, Muriel.
Thank you.
It's due to blurred vision in my left eye. I'm sorry about that. Right, we'll continue now with Julie Lawson.
Hello, Chair. Julie Lawson, Planning Department.
Thank you. Aidan Dobinson Booth.
Yes, good morning, Chair. Aidan Dobinson Booth, Principal Planning Officer.
Thank you. Dave McCall.
Yeah, Dave McCall, Highways Officer.
Thank you. Do we have Claire Wilson or Francis McLean?
Good morning, Chair. Claire Wilson, representing Environmental Health.
Thank you, Claire. Tessa Crowe.
Good morning, Chair. Legal representative to the committee.
Thank you. And Dave Brown.
Morning, everyone. Dave Brown, Democratic Services.
Thanks for that. Now, just so people know, we do have other officers joining the meeting to provide technical support and cover in the event of connections being lost. Now, can I remind everyone, please, as I've said, to turn off your microphone and your camera when you're not speaking. Please only speak when you're invited to do so. Activate your microphone and camera, obviously, before speaking. And if you could state your name, we know who it is, but members of the public watching on YouTube perhaps won't. If any member or officer wishes to speak, can you please use the hand raised button or alternatively the chat facility? And if all else fails, put your hand in front of your camera and I'll detect that if I can see you. If referring to any specific points in the report, please specify the page number. And if any participant's connection to the meeting is lost, we'll adjourn for a short while to see if we can restore that connection. So now we can move on to the formal agenda. We have received apologies from Councillor Paul Richardson. Are there any other apologies?
I'm not aware of any other apologies, Chair.
Thank you. And we're advised that Councillor Carl Johnson is substituting for Councillor Paul Richardson. That's the only substitution?
Yep.
Fine. Item 3, declarations of interest. Can I invite any members of the committee who have interests that they would like to declare in relation to items on the agenda to do so now? I'll take silence as no interests to be declared. And can I ask that we confirm as a correct record?
I just raised my hand. I just wanted to say that I have been to an exhibition concerning the application regarding the Places for People McCarthy and Stoneside, but I have not predetermined or made any comment on those exhibitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. No others. That's fine. Right now, can we confirm the minutes of the last meeting held on the 7th of July as a correct record? And I'll take that silence as consent.
Chair, I tried to put my hand up. I don't know if it worked. I actually submitted apologies for the last meeting, but they weren't recorded. I'm just going to ask that my apologies be added to the minutes of the last meeting.
Okay, Dave, can we record that, please?
That's fine, Chair. Yes, we'll do that.
Yes, Willie, yeah, your hand signal did go up. It's just I'm trying to read two screens and a sheet of papers here.
I've lowered it now.
Okay, no one else has indicated thus far. So did we agree those? Yes, we agreed the minutes. We can now move on to item 5, which is the planning officer's reports. And members are asked to have regard to the guidance set out in pages 7 to 10 of the agenda papers. Is that noted? Thank you. And we move on to item 6 now. For the benefit of members of the public here, items 6 and 7 refer to the site of Coquet Park and Marine Park First Schools, and it would appear that we're considering two items for the same site. In actual fact, it's two separate parts of the same site. So with that advisory note, can we move into the consideration? And Aidan, could you please present the details?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, Chair. So this is item 6, first of all, and it's page 13 on your agenda papers. I'm just going to share the presentation now with you. Right. Hopefully that's come up now. Can you all see the sort of start page? Just to make sure.
Yes.
Great.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So yes, item 1. This is the site of the Coquet, or former Coquet Park and Marine Park First Schools, and Whitley Bay. And the proposal is for the erection of an extra care accommodation, which is use class C2, with associated private amenity space, landscaping and car parking. The application site is an area of grassland, as I say, formerly occupied by Coquet Park and Marine Park First Schools. There are no longer any remnants of the previous use, and therefore the site is greenfield. The site slopes gently downwards towards the sea and is within Whitley Bay Town Centre. The site is allocated for residential use in the local plan. To the southeast is St Edward's Roman Catholic Church, which is a tall Grade 2 listed building. To the northeast, opposite side of the road, is Marine Park Primary School. The last approval for 78 apartments on this site was in 2008. So the main issue for members to consider are the principle, character and appearance, impact on neighbours, parking and access. There have been 6 objections, 4 in support and 2 neutral. Marine Park First School object, and Councillor O'Shea supports the proposal. Moving on now to consider the issue of principle, the development would contribute to meeting the housing needs of the borough and is considered to accord with the aims of NPPF to increase the delivery and also policy DM 4.8, which supports the provision of specialist housing. This is an application for residential on a site allocated for such in the local plan and is considered acceptable and, as I say, in accordance with that policy. Members need to consider whether the principle of the construction of 65 extra care residential apartments on this site is acceptable. It's officer advice that it is. Moving on now to 5-year housing land supply. The council has a 5-year supply of housing. However, this is a minimum and not a maximum. Further planning permissions that add to the supply of housing can be granted, which further add to this supply. The site is allocated for 41 units in the local plan. However, this number was not derived following detailed design work, as has been carried out as part of this application. This is an allocated housing site, and if it were not to be developed, would undermine the ability of the council to meet its obligation to provide a 5-year supply of housing. Moving on now to character and appearance. The plans have been revised following comments by the council's design officer. The design officer does not object, but does have concerns regarding the quality of the accommodation provided within the units occupying the internal corners, which are in total five units. If I just go back to the layout, so essentially it's concerned regarding these units here that are in the corners. He considers the main habitable rooms to these units will be substantially overshadowed with poor outlook. Whilst the windows serving the main bedrooms of each of these units will be set back slightly, they will face out onto their own private balcony and enjoy largely unobstructed views towards the landscaped area and highways beyond the southeast and the parking area, communal gardens and highway beyond to the southwest. Although the windows may be slightly overshadowed by the above balcony, it is not considered that they will provide an unacceptably poor standard of outlook or daylight, given that windows and doors serving the main areas will be relatively large and will provide access to a balcony. Direct sunlight will be available to the southeastern / eastern facing windows on a morning and to the western southwestern facing windows of an afternoon or evening, because obviously the sun path would, if you can see, would pass obviously from east to west. It's considered that the proposal responds well to the site layout and integrated well with the surrounding buildings in accordance with the advice in MPPF and local plan policy DM 6.1 and the design quality SPD. Impact on heritage assets. I'll just go back. Okay, sorry. There, so you can see the listed church and also relation to the playhouse there. So the site is located in close proximity to 3 listed buildings: St Edward's Church, the sewer gas lamp, which is opposite the playhouse, and the Spanish City / Empress Ballroom, all of which operate 2 listed. The council's design officer considers that the proposal would have an acceptable relationship to the church. In terms of the Spanish City Dome, the most important view of this building is from the seafront. The proposal would not adversely affect this. In terms of the sewer gas lamp, it would be seen in the context of other tall buildings, such as the playhouse and St Edward's Church, and therefore would not adversely affect its setting. Members need to consider whether they agree. Let's go back to the layout. For impact in terms of neighbours, the neighbours most likely to be directly affected by a proposal are existing residents of Marine Gardens and Coquet Avenue, and the future occupiers of the proposed residential dwellings that are due to be considered next at this committee. That's the next item, which is the ones that are just to the west there. The impact in terms of neighbours is considered in detail in your report from paragraphs 12 to 12.19. Members therefore need to determine whether this proposal is acceptable in terms of its impact on the amenity of surrounding occupiers. It's officer advice that it is. Moving on now to car parking and access, the Highway Network Manager states that the site is accessed from Coquet Avenue. An appropriate level of parking has been provided for the proposed use. The site also has good links with public transport, and there are controls in place in the vicinity of the site. The site is also within a sustainable location, being within Whitley Bay Town Centre. Members need to consider whether the proposal would provide sufficient parking and access and weight this in their decision. It's officer advice that it would. Biodiversity and landscaping. The Council's biodiversity officer says that it's reasonable to assume that recreational impacts on the quality features of the Special Protection Area and Ramsar sites are very unlikely. Natural England agree. Therefore, no mitigation or contribution towards a coastal warden is required in this particular case. Moving on now to other matters. In terms of land contamination, the Council's Contaminated Land Officer does not object. The site is also within Flood Zone 1, which is the lowest risk. Northern Marine Water and the Council's Local Lead Flood Authority do not object. In terms of Section 106 contributions, the proposal is for a residential institution where all residents are elderly and increasing need of care. As such, it is unlikely that they will impact on the use of community space for outdoor activities and, for example, allotments. Indeed, on-site landscape gardens will be provided, which will be for suitable use by the residents. A condition is recommended in respect of 2 apprenticeship opportunities for local people during the construction phase. So, in conclusion, the proposal would provide extra care residential accommodation for older people, which is a benefit of the scheme and a material consideration of substantial weight. It would be integrated into the local residential community and, subject to conditions, provide an acceptable residential living environment for future occupiers. It would not have an adverse impact on the character or appearance of the surrounding area or neighbouring properties. The proposal would not have an adverse impact on highway safety. Therefore, it's recommended that planning permission should be granted subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Aidan. Now, in accordance with the committee's temporary speaking rights, expressions have been invited to submit written statements to the committee in relation to this application. Ms. Jean Laurie of Coquet Avenue is invited. However, we haven't received a statement from her, but Mrs. Joanna Unthank of Coquet Avenue has been granted permission to submit a written statement, and I would now like to invite the clerk to the committee to read out Mrs. Unthank's statement, please.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So this is this statement from Mrs. Unthank. Further to my comments submitted regarding the development for extra care accommodation on Coquet Marine Avenue, I write to give a written statement in lieu of speaking rights due to COVID-19. Whilst I do not object to the concept of the development, I would like to object to this application in its current form due to the traffic generation, access, congestion and adequacy of parking, turning and loading. It is my view and that of the local community and businesses that in its current form, access to the development is poorly situated and evidence suggests that it will cause highway safety issues. My 9-year-old son has already suffered a collision with a vehicle on this stretch of road, and I have no doubt the likelihood of this type of incident will increase with increased volume of traffic and size of vehicles. The proposed vehicle access location on Coquet Avenue will exacerbate problems with traffic, congestion and pedestrian safety. Coquet Avenue is narrow and one-way. Parking is on curb on one side of the road, and despite carefully experienced parking, we already frequently have damage to our vehicle due to the volume and nature of traffic down the road. This became worse when Parkview was pedestrianised due to larger delivery vehicles using the street more frequently, causing traffic build-ups and congestion as they could not easily or safely navigate the narrow streets and junctions. Adding in an increased volume of vehicles accessing the new development, including larger amenity and medical vehicles, etc., will make traffic simply unmanageable. Turning circles will be narrow, visibility tricky, and pedestrian safety compromised, with vehicles accessing Coquet Avenue and crossing what is currently an uninterrupted stretch of pavement between residential streets and the largest first school in Whitley Bay. If this is to go ahead, the vehicle access should be off the main thoroughfare Park Road, where the road is wider and already suitable for large vehicles, or the two-way section at the eastern end of Marine Gardens opposite the Playhouse car park. That way, existing residents would not be impacted by the volume of resident and visitor vehicles, or most importantly, the amenity and service vehicles accessing the new property. I discussed this at length with the developer at the consultation event held at WBBC and have been disappointed to see that this was not reflected in the plans. If a development of this scale is to go ahead, it would need to be under a condition that the surrounding streets to become permit holder only parking for current residents only. New developments on the street cannot be offered on-street parking permits. Spaces will be lost due to the vehicle access and pay and display parking in bays after the back lanes cross the avenue at the western end needs to be suspended to reflect this. Pay and display is already inappropriate and parking is already insufficient on Coquet Avenue, where residents frequently struggle to park within streets of their homes. This issue has been highlighted in recent weeks when Parkview on-street parking has been suspended as more shoppers have used pay and display spaces the length of Coquet Avenue. I speak for my fellow local residents when I say that there is acceptance that the land will be developed, but that we would urge decision makers to ensure that the final plans which are approved are safe, suitable and considerate of local people's needs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Now I understand that the applicant has now submitted a statement in response to Mrs. Unthank's comments. Is that correct?
He has indeed. I shall read the applicant's response.
Thank you.
It's from the agent on behalf of the applicant. So on behalf of my client, may I thank you for giving me the opportunity to submit this statement in response to the earlier statement submitted by Mrs. J. Unthank, which is to be presented to the committee. Mrs. Unthank's objection can be summarised as follows. 1, that the traffic generation and congestion. 2, the vehicular access. 3, adequacy of the on-site car parking. 4, adequacy of the on-site turning and loading. Traffic generation and congestion. The transport statement submitted as part of the planning application identifies the traffic generation associated with the proposed extra care C2 development. The traffic generation is based upon regular surveys undertaken at other operational McCarthy and Stone extra care C2 developments. Retirement living plus developments are one of the lowest traffic generating forms of residential development, particularly during the peak traffic hours when volumes of vehicles on the surrounding highway network are at their highest. This is not surprising, as the average age of entry of residents occupying extra care developments has been found by survey to be 84 years of age. Therefore, residents are unlikely to work or have any need to travel during peak traffic hours. As summarised in the submitted transport statement, the retirement living plus development now proposed would be expected to generate some 7 vehicle movements per hour, two-way during the morning peak hour, and some 5 vehicle movements per hour, two-way during the evening peak hour. These modest levels of generated trips would not result in any congestion on the surrounding highway network. The majority of vehicles associated with the operation of this proposed development will be residents and visitors' cars and not large vehicles, other than when residents first move into the development and may have furniture deliveries. These initial deliveries will be staggered as full occupation of the development typically takes 1 to 2 years. Vehicular access to the site. The vehicular access to the site is located on a lower category road leading onto a higher category road, as is the normal practice. The access has been designed to accommodate the turning of all vehicle types anticipated to enter and leave the site, even having regard to the on-street parking on Coket Avenue in the immediate vicinity of the proposed access. The access satisfies current design recommendations with good inter-visibility towards other users of the highway. It should operate in a safe and satisfactory manner. There is no evidence to the contrary. Adequacy of on-site car parking. The submitted transport statement demonstrates that, again based upon regular surveys, more than adequate parking provision, 34 parking spaces, is incorporated within this development to accommodate all of the parking demands anticipated. The level of parking provision is significantly higher than required by the Council's car parking standards set out in the Transport and Highways SPD, i.e. a total of 13 parking spaces for this proposed extra care development. The development will not be likely to lead to any parking on the neighbouring streets or within the public car park access from Marine Gardens. Evidence from surveys shows that residents of extra care developments tend to give up the use of their vehicles within the early years of the proposed development. This reduces the on-site parking demand further. Adequacy of the on-site turning and loading. The on-site turning and loading areas have been designed with the aid of AutoTrack vehicle manoeuvring software to accommodate the turning of all vehicle types anticipated to enter and leave the site, even having regard to the on-street parking on Coket Avenue in the immediate vicinity of the proposed access. The Highway Network Manager has recommended the inclusion of a planning condition ensuring adequate facilities will be provided within the site for the storage and collection of waste. The inclusion of this planning condition is accepted by the developer. Conclusion. Having considered the issues raised by Mrs. Unthank, it is concluded that there is no evidence to support the highway-related objections raised in respect of this extra care proposal. The Highway Network Manager has not raised any objections to the site being accessed from Coket Avenue. The Manager has accepted this development incorporates an appropriate level of on-site car parking. The site also has good links with public transport, and there are parking controls in place in the vicinity of the site. Paragraph 109 of NPPF states that development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. It has been demonstrated that the residual cumulative impacts on the road network resulting from the approval of the proposed development would not be severe. Hence, subject to conditions, the development is acceptable in highway terms and is in accordance with the advice in NPPF, Policy DM 7.4 and LDD 12. In this regard, it is respectfully requested that members support the planning application submitted on behalf of my client. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave. Just before I invite members to ask any questions to officers, can I ask Dave McCall if he's got anything to add to that, because it was very much a traffic-related objection. Anything to add, Dave?
Of course, Chair. I think the developers answered it very well, to be honest. I mean, I could probably put some numbers behind that and just probably go through my committee notes. The parking requirement is actually only 13 spaces, but that's based on care homes and what have you, because we didn't actually have a parking standard for this type of development. So that the developer actually provided quite a substantial amount of evidence when they put their application in. So what they worked out from all their existing developments is that they need 0.42 spaces per dwelling, which would equate to 27 spaces per site. What they've actually provided is 0.52 spaces per dwelling, which is the 34 spaces we've got. We've also done our own surveys on two of the local sites in the area at Bygate and the old YMCA site at Grosvenor. And the proportion on Bygate was 0.45, and the proportion of parking on the YMCA site was 0.52. And when we've done the surveys, the average occupancy of Bygate is 61%, and then with a maximum of 88%, and the average the YM is 37% with a maximum of 69%. So I think all in all, in terms of parking, there should be more than enough spaces for the requirements of the site.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave. Can I invite members of the committee now to indicate if they wish to ask questions? Councillor Muriel Green.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute.
Oh, we heard you there.
There we are. Okay, I'll put my face on as well. Yes, thank you very much. A couple of questions that are relevant. Aidan, you said that the original development plan was for 41 units. Is that 41 on that particular site plus 9, which would make it up to 50 for the whole site? Or is that 41 for the whole site, including the bit that's a planning application for the additional 9 as well? That's the first question. The second question is, how much consultation has there been with adult social care? And this is very much a new and challenging type of extra care, and people can be in there from 60 to 90, so it got through 2 generations. I'm interested in what facilities there are for overnight care staff, because there will have to be a team of care people in it. It'll be a 24-hour care, if that's the type of scheme it is, because extra care covers a multitude of things at the moment. And as Dave said about the parking, there is no sort of criteria for parking about these things. Well, I just wonder what adult social care had to say about the facilities for staff, the facilities for communal areas for people that will obviously need rooms and things. So have we got an answer to those 2 questions, please?
You have the floor, Aidan.
Right, thank you very much. I'll just turn myself back on. So in answer to the first question about the allocation for the 41 covers the whole site. So it's 41 on the entire site. So it's not a case of this plus the bit next to it. The only thing I would say is, and obviously there's reference to this in the case officer's report, is that the 41 figure isn't derived following any detailed design work. What it's done is it's sort of essentially applying a density figure that's thought to be appropriate within a town centre over the size of the site and coming up with an approximate number of dwellings. So it hasn't been derived following any detailed design work. Obviously, that this application has undertaken. So there's that point to note for members as well. In terms of adult social care, they haven't made any specific representations with regards to this application, although they were consulted. They did raise some comments at the pre-application stage. Very much the issue that they were looking at there was sort of issues surrounding things to do with need. Now, there isn't any requirement within the planning policy to demonstrate need, so it's just a case of it's an application, and there's wider government initiatives that says the country desperately needs more of these type of facilities. So the council can't reasonably question the issue of need. But what I'll do is I'll go back onto the presentation, and I'll show you some of the the floor layouts. If you just bear with me a moment. Right, can you see the sort of the floor layouts there on the screen?
Can't see anything.
Nothing's coming up.
Nothing's coming up, Aidan.
Right, bear with me a moment. Right, I'll try again. Sure, here we go. Right. Hopefully that'll work this time.
Right. Okay.
Right. If you can see that, so you've got obviously it's color coded and it says that obviously the different bedroom types. Now you have got in it abilities for staff to stay overnight. There is sort of full facilities for staff. So yes, in terms of the staff provision, they are kind of well catered for. There's offices in there and various things like that, and there is accommodation for staff to stay over if needs be. So yes, they are well provided in terms of facilities for staff to enable to support the residents.
Is that the blue bit at the top?
Yeah, that's part of it. I'll see if I can go to the next one as well.
What floor is that?
Bear with me.
The ground floor?
I think this is the ground floor, yes. Just right. Right. See if I can get the next. There we go. Okay. So we've got So I think that's the ground floor, and then you've got additional some smaller additional facilities around the lift shaft. But and there is that sort of large area towards the side is the sort of eating area, the restaurant and the kitchen, which is available obviously for residents. But there's associated staff facilities kind of around and next to that.
And on the second floor?
Second floor, so I think, if you bear with me, okay, I've got it. Right, so if I go through ground, first, there we go.
So there's just two floors. There's not a third story.
So it's ground, first, second floor. So again, if I just go back and show you it in elevations, you've got three floors of accommodation.
Yes.
So there's ground, first, second.
And are the balconies in those? Are they Juliet balconies or are they real balconies?
No, they're you can see from on the outline there. Yes. That sort of small, sort of little protruding parts. They are actually proper balconies, so people would be able to use them as a proper balcony and to sit out on them.
So where is the staff accommodation on the top floor?
I don't think there is any staff accommodation on the top floor, unless there's the circulation space on that kind of I'm looking at the white section, but there's nothing specifically annotated on this plan for it that I can see.
Aidan, can I ask, presumably each bedroom will be provided with a panic button so that residents could alert overnight staff of the need for attention. Is that the case?
Yeah, I presume so. I mean, the level of the care, it caters for the sort of should we say the full range. So yes, there will be people in here who are in need of a very intensive level of care, and they will be able to get it here. So yes, it caters for a wide range, and the idea is that sort of once you do move in here, and let's say your health does deteriorate, that you're able to be sort of kept in the same place, and it's the care package essentially revolves around you and develops in order to sort of keep you in the same place really as far as possible.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, Councillor Green?
Not at the moment, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Barry.
Just one question to the highways. Opposite the entrance, where the entranceway is, if a car parked on the other opposite side, how wide is the actual street? And would it be adequate turning to get something like a refuse collection vehicle in?
The street is 6 metres wide. But the refuse collection strategy is actually the refuse is kept on site during the week, but it'll be placed on the highway on collection day, like every other house on that street. So you couldn't get a refuse vehicle out and turn there safely, but you wouldn't need to. It would just be the cost.
Thank you.
Sorry, I've just realised I was muted. I was inviting any other members who wish to ask questions to indicate. Are there any? Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chair. I'm referring to Appendix 1, page 48, paragraph 1.55 in relation to design comments. There was a question about the quality of the accommodation in the corner units. I wondered if you could comment on that, Aidan.
Yes, of course. Now, are you still able to see the sort of site layout plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can still see it on the. Good. Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't think I'm able to get the kind of cursor on to talk around it, but essentially it's the sort of the corner the kind of corner units themselves, and the issue of the kind of the projection. Now, in our view, in terms of the planning officers, I mean, yes, there will be an impact, but we don't feel that the accommodation will be so severely impacted as to make it kind of adverse. So because of the orientation that the properties are, yes, they are single aspect, but in effect, the sort of the front of the apartment block would get direct sunlight in the sort of in the early morning towards and then sort of early afternoon, and then the same would happen in terms of the afternoon for the an evening for the other side. So I mean, yes, they do have an impact which is affected by the projection, but we felt that in essence that's only kind of one way in terms of when you look at it, and that when looking the other way, we felt on balance that it would be acceptable. So yes, we note the design officer's comments, but we feel that in this instance that the dwellings have been, or the units have been designed in a way that will provide an acceptable residential living environment for future occupiers.
Okay, so can I, in relation to the comments there, can I ask you, are you, as officers, assured that those single aspect dwellings will have adequate lighting and ventilation?
Yes, I mean, from our point of view, yes, we believe that can be achieved. The ventilation issue is just a case for yes, in terms of through environmental health. So yes, in our view, we believe that they do provide an acceptable form of residential accommodation, and for these type of units, this isn't uncommon. Like I say, both sides of the kind of unit, I mean, yes, they are single aspect, but that's not uncommon, and they both will have access to sort of direct sunlight, one in the sort of morning and one in the afternoon, and we feel on balance that that's acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Aidan.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Green's indicated again.
Yes, Chair. I take it none of these properties will ever become available to sell. They're all come under the McCarthy Stone. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's my understanding. That yes, it's McCarthy and Stone who own, operate, and manage the units. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham.
I have some information about that. McCarthy and Stone have always sold properties, but due to the severe loss of value after first purchase, they're now looking to rent these properties, and I believe a significant number of these flats will be available for rent. That's my understanding anyway.
Thank you.
Can I come back?
Does that mean, Muriel, that you want to come back?
Yes, I just wonder if we can put a caveat on or a condition on it that these properties will not be available for sale. The development is so big with 61 units, and it is, and looking at it from what I can see here, cramped on the top and the first and the second floor. To have a mix of for sale and rental, and I know we have done in many years past put a condition on that none of them will ever come up for sale. Is there a way we can put that onto this development?
There's nothing that I'm aware of. In terms of obviously a condition has to meet the sort of six tests. And I would say that a condition that restricts the sale of the units would possibly be unreasonable. So my advice would be that I don't think we could attach a condition preventing any future sales.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for that. I fully appreciate where Councillor Green's coming from, and I wish that we were able to impose such a condition following experiences that I've had in the Riverside ward, but the officer advice is that we're not able to impose such a condition, so we're going to have to take McCarthy Stone at their word. Are there any other questions from members before we move on to comments? No, I've got two hands up on the screen, but those two people have just spoken recently. That's Muriel and Sandra.
Chair, could I just come in there? Apologies, just want to correct an earlier answer on the refuse vehicle. They actually have demonstrated that they can do that manoeuvre. That was questioned, so they can enter and leave, turn within the site and leave in a forward direction. But nonetheless, their intention is that they still will do a curbside collection.
Right, thank you for that, Dave. Can I now invite comments on this application? Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I still have some concerns about the size of the units, but when you look at residential care and the size of rooms that people live in those, and the small apartments that people have within this, I think this is a good option for people, and a halfway house between leaving their own home, as it were, and moving into full-on residential care. and I think there is a need for it throughout the borough, and people will come from all over the borough, I think, to take up these places. I still have some concerns about the height. I think the access has to be off Coquet because Park Avenue is a very busy one-way road, and I think that would slow things down there coming up to the Playhouse lights. And on balance, with all things taken into consideration, I will be supporting this application.
Thank you for that, Sandra. No other members indicated they wish to comment so far, so I'd like to add one or two comments. The first one is really to address a public concern, that is that we appear to be considering an application for a greenfield site. The fact of the matter is that it is a green field, but it's not green belt. It's only a green field because the developers themselves seeded and grassed the land in the very first instance. This is part of history now, so as to avoid the place becoming an eyesore. I think that the applicant has satisfactorily considered and revised this scheme. This has been something of an historical site in any case, and we have had some difficulty in finding a development that is satisfactory here. I think this has been achieved not least by the developer compromising and the rigour of the planning officers that have been involved in this over the years to try to reach a satisfactory conclusion. So on that basis, I'll be voting in favour of this. We still have a situation whereby, according to my screen, no other member has indicated they wish to comment. I'll conclude by saying that Councillor O'Shea has indicated his agreement to this. So that's two of the relevant ward councillors. And I think I was just getting an indication that Councillor Green wished to comment.
Yes, Chair, wait a minute. Can you hear me now? Right.
Okay.
I have quite severe concerns about the number of units that there are on this development. And, you know, we've watched a number of planning applications come forward for this site over the years. If it goes through in its present form, I do have concerns that we're storing up problems for older people in the future. The more units you have on one site, the more difficult it becomes to manage. And we clearly have no guidelines from the government at all at the moment about what they're looking for in terms of housing and social care. And maybe at the end of the day, reluctantly, I'm forced to say that we have to actually go ahead with this because but I'm very concerned about the number of units that people are trying to push onto one site. It doesn't do bode well for the older people of the future if it becomes you know, an unmanageable site. So again, it's been very difficult to actually come to terms with, and yes, I think probably I would vote for it, but I really do have the concerns. I just want them voiced now because I probably won't be here when it gets built by this. Anyway, thank you. So, okay, thank you very much. Anyway.
Well, I don't voluntarily share your pessimism, Muriel. Can I invite Councillor Brady to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I share some of Councillor Green's concerns, and particularly around the design unit of some of the corner units, which I feel is representative of trying to maybe get too many units on one development. That said, I think it is a welcome addition to the housing in the borough. There is a need for this sort of housing and will continue to be. So on balance, having reflected on all of that, I will be supporting this development.
Okay, thank you for that. No one else has indicated, so can I invite the committee clerk to go through a roll call, please? The recommendation is to approve the application subject to the conditions set out on pages 31 to 40. That's 9 pages of conditions, so I think that we have fairly well conditioned this application. And you have the rest of the recommendation from the officers in front of you. So can I ask the clerk now to call out the names of each member of the committee, and can you indicate please if you are for or against?
Councillor Barry?
For.
Councillor Brady?
For.
Councillor Dark?
For.
Councillor Graham?
For, but can I also ask if IT would get in touch with me, please? I'm sending the messages, but nobody's responding. I think I'm about to be cut off. Okay.
Councillor Green?
Reluctantly for.
Councillor Johnson?
For.
Councillor Lott?
For.
Councillor Samuel?
For, and just to mention, I'm having IT issues this morning as well.
Okay. And Councillor Wheatman?
For.
Okay, Chair, so that's 9 in favour and none against.
Thank you for that. So that is now approved. Can we please move on to item 7 on page 55? Again, the site of Coquet Park and Marine Fair Schools, but a different application for a different part of the site. Aidan, is this you again?
Yes, it is, Chair.
Can I just check before you start, have all members received the additional information that was sent out in an addendum?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Please proceed, Aidan.
Thank you. I'll just go back to the presentation. Again, just take a moment to load. Right. Right. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Is it come up there, item 2 or not?
It's come up as item 2.
Brilliant. Okay, good. Right. So this is, yes, on page 55 of your agenda papers, and description of the site. The site is immediately adjacent to the last one, just slightly further to the southwest. It's part of the same site allocated for residential use according to the local plan. So description of the proposal. The proposal relates to the construction of 9 dwellings arranged in 2 terraces facing onto Marine Gardens and Coquet Avenue, with a parking court to the rear and associated landscaping. The main issue for members to consider are principle, character and appearance, impact on neighbours, parking and access. There has been 4 objections and 1 letter of support, a summary of which is set out in Appendix 1 of your committee paper. An addendum was circulated towards the end of last week, including additional comments from the local lead foot authority and the council's design officer. An additional condition regarding drainage is also recommended. Moving on to principle. The site is allocated for housing, and the proposal is for 9 affordable homes. This is a housing application on an allocated housing site, and therefore it's considered that the principle is in accordance with the advice in National Planning Policy Framework and also policies in the local plan. Members need to consider whether they agree. 5-year housing allowance supply. Although the council can demonstrate a 5-year supply, this is a minimum rather than a maximum. Further permissions that add to the supply of housing can be granted, which add to the choice and range of housing. Members need to weight this in their decision. Okay. If you look at the addendum that was circulated towards the end of last week, you will note that the design officer objects. He says that the submitted street scenes show that the units do not sit well in relation to their eaves height, ridge height, window size and design. The proposed units do not respond to the surrounding existing residential dwellings or the proposed design of the extra care accommodation adjacent to the site. He says that the design conflicts with the local plan policy DM 6.1, design of development, and also the design quality SPD. I, however, disagree. The proposed terrace follows the established building lines of Coquet Avenue and Marine Avenue. They are a terrace, but how is the fact that a terrace in itself harmful? The semi-detached properties that you'll see, and if I go back to Google Earth, you'll see here the semi-detached properties along the street, are not pairs of semis with large gaps in between in a way that would be commonly found in suburban locations. They are close together with a minimal gap, and a terrace would, in my opinion, not look out of place. The proposed street scenes do show that proposed terrace would have a lower eaves and ridge height. However, once again, this, in my view, does not result in any harm. The site, and indeed the surroundings, all gently slope down towards the sea, as can be seen from the Google Earth image. If you can see there, you can see, especially in terms of the marine gardens, you can see the slope and the fact that the properties are set on a slope and therefore don't have a uniform ridge or eaves height. If you follow the design officer's comments to their logical conclusion, then what you would get would be a much larger, more imposing houses with larger windows than are proposed. And this would have an associated greater visual impact. The proposed terrace properties are considered to be subservient and would avoid having an adverse impact. Members need to decide whether they agree. Moving on now to impact on heritage assets. Now, due to the relatively small scale of the proposed development, it's not considered that it would adversely affect the setting of St Edward's Church, Spanish City, or the sewer gas lamp opposite the Playhouse, which are all Grade 2 listed. And members need to consider whether they agree. Concerns in terms of neighbours, concerns have been raised by local residents with regards to disturbance during the construction phase. However, such disturbance will be temporary and the impact can be reduced through a condition to limit the hours which the building work can take place, as well as a construction management plan. The neighbours most likely to be directly affected are those on Marine Gardens and Coquet Avenue. Proposed dwellings will occupy the same front and rear building lines of the dwellings to the southwest and will have no impact on the existing standard of outlook, daylight and privacy currently enjoyed via main habitable windows in these dwellings or the enjoyment of their rear gardens. Number 2, Coquet Avenue will largely be screened by the existing hall, which you can see there in the bottom left of the screen. Members need to determine whether the proposed development is acceptable in terms of its impact on the immediate surrounding occupiers. Officer advice is that it is. Next issue, in terms of whether the homes would provide an acceptable living conditions, it is considered that they would, and that they provide an acceptable standard of internal and external space with sufficient refuse storage facilities for each home, and members need to consider whether they agree. Moving on now to car parking and access, objections have been received by local residents with regards to the highway impact of the proposal. These concerns are noted. However, the Highway Network Manager has recommended conditional approval, noting the level of on-site parking provision and the new access from Marine Gardens. He's advised that the site also has good links with public transport and that there are parking controls in place within the vicinity of the site. The site is within a sustainable location, being within Whitley Bay Town Centre. Members need to consider whether the proposal will provide sufficient parking and access and weight this in their decision. It's officer advice that it would. Moving on now to biodiversity and landscaping, the application is within the 6 kilometres of the Northumbrian Coastal Special Protection Area and Ramsar site, the Northumberland Shore Site of Special Scientific Interest, and the Tynemouth to Seaton Sluice Site of Special Scientific Interest. The applicant has agreed to enter into a legal agreement with the council to provide mitigation for the additional recreational impact on the coast in accordance with the requirements of the Coastal Mitigation Supplementary Planning Document, and therefore it's not considered that the proposal would result in harm to ecology or designated sites. Members need to consider whether they agree. Moving on now to other matters. In terms of land contamination, the Council's Contaminated Land Officer does not object, subject to conditions. The site is in Flood Zone 1, which is the lowest risk. Northumbrian Water and the local lead flood authority do not object. The local lead flood authority has requested an additional drainage condition, which is set out in your addendum and is also recommended. In terms of Section 106 contributions, given that the proposal is only for 9 dwellings, it's below the threshold which is sought for planning obligations, which is 10 dwellings or more. In conclusion, therefore, the application site occupies part of an allocated housing site within the existing built-up area and designated town centre in close proximity to local services. It would provide 9 affordable homes in a sustainable location in accordance with the advice of a national planning policy framework and the local plan, and it is recommended that planning permission is granted subject to a Section 106 legal agreement to secure the necessary coastal mitigation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Aidan. We haven't received any requests for speaking rights, so can I now invite members of the committee to ask any questions? Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I lost connection as I thought I would. Just about the parking, there are severe issues with parking in this area, and this is really a question for Mr. McCall. Obviously, there will be a loss of car parking with the access both onto Coquet Avenue and Marine Gardens, so probably lose parking for about 4 cars there. And the papers say that permit parking may not be considered for these. Why do we say may when it really maybe should be prescribed that there would be no consideration of car parking permits for these properties?
No, they wouldn't be eligible to get a permit. You have to be on the current list, so you'd have to change the scheme in that area to add these dwellings, which I definitely wouldn't support, and the park manager wouldn't support either. So, you know, these properties would not get new permits. And to be fair, there's sufficient park within the site that actually meets the parking standards anyway.
I totally agree. So why do we not use a more prescribed word and not say may not, we say will not?
I mean, I could. It's just a word I've always used, just to cover areas where maybe the existing conditions aren't too bad, so it wouldn't be an issue. But I think certainly in this area, and I've done a recent planning appeal for a site nearby, and I did cite the parking issues as one of the reasons why I objected to that application. It was for a restaurant near the playhouse. But no, I mean, I can advise that between myself and the park manager, we would strongly object at least to the parking permits being given. But you know, I'm 99% certain they wouldn't get them unless they took us to court or something like that. But that's never actually happened.
I wonder why we don't prescribe it within the documentation and give them a hope with may not, but actually put will not.
Well, I can certainly change that word in future applications if members are prefer to do that.
Could we condition it? Would there be room for condition?
I don't think it would be condition. I mean, I think we've explored in the past. You could maybe write into a Section 106 agreement, and I've heard of other authorities that have done that. But to be honest, the informative, if you like, or the deterrent's always been enough so far. I suppose if we ever got a test case against that, then it may be something that we'd look at in the future. But it's certainly food for thought for future applications.
Well, pressing the point, Dave, is it food for thought for this application? In other words, could there maybe change to will?
I mean, I suppose for the purposes of the report, the word can be changed, but I'll probably seek advice from a legal colleague or perhaps planners about whether that could be added as an additional condition, but I'm not convinced it meets the tests for planning conditions.
Okay, any advice from legal on that?
Chair, Carl may have something to say.
Well, I've seen Carl's hand go up. Trish Brady actually is before Carl, but Carl, can I ask, is your hand up in order to help on this point?
It was, Chair. It was just said, I don't really think a condition is necessary. It's nowhere near meeting any of the threshold. It would be nowhere near any of our points to get a parking permit in the first place, so we'd have almost no chance of getting one, regardless of whether we put the condition in. And I do think, like Dave says, the condition would be unreasonable. But the fact is, regardless of what condition you do or don't put in, they wouldn't get parking permits there anyway. So I don't think it's necessary.
Right. Thanks for that contribution. Councillor Graham, I suspect you're not 100% happy with that. But can I move on to Councillor Brady, please?
I'm happy. I'm happy.
You are happy. I'm pleased to hear that. Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just a question of process. I wonder if you could give me some idea of how, when the authority is working with developers, the planning team, is the design officer involved at that stage? I'm just slightly concerned that we're 2 applications in a row questioning the design officer's comments, given that we have made a commitment to good design in the borough, and I think it's important that we do maintain that. So I just wondered about the process. Is the design officer involved in the process of working with the planning team to get something that's right?
Yes, very much so. So the design officer is involved in the same way that any other consultee is involved. So they're notified initially of the application when it comes in. That they may have been involved, obviously, at the pre-application stage as well, but they will be notified in the same way, and then their comments are received, and then invariably what we do is we then feed the comments back to the applicant, and then the applicant consider those comments and then kind of come back to us with a response. So what I would say is, I mean, yes, on the first item, the design officer had concerns, but he wasn't objecting. On this one, it's different. He does actually object. Now, where we've got with this is, yes, he was involved. He asked for them to be revised further, but the applicant has chosen not to do that. In the applicant's view, this is acceptable. So it was then put to us, well, okay, what do we do with this? Now, my view was we carry on, because I think, as I said in the presentation, if you follow the design officer's comments through to their logical conclusion, what are you actually asking for? You're asking for the breakup of the terrace into semis, okay, and then you're asking for the semis themselves to be larger in terms of size. So in terms of to increase the eaves height and increase the ridge height, but ultimately, where does that lead you? It just leads you to some larger dwellings. Now, and then the other issue to think about is what's proposed in itself harmful? Now, in my view, and I appreciate members may take a different view to this, in my view, what's proposed isn't harmful. It's quite clearly, yes, it is. They are smaller, they are subservient, but they don't, to me, from the images there, look out of place or have an adverse impact on the character and appearance. So that's why, on balance, we're recommending it. But yes, the design officer was fully involved in the process.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, about the kind of generativity of that relationship. I think that it does slightly stand out for me. I think there are some issues, but as you say, I mean, how would we resolve those? I was just more interested in the process. So thank you for explaining that, Aidan. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dark, Linda Dark.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering if we can make sure that when the building work is going on, that the proper hours are stuck to, because I've had much experience of builders flouting the rules, and this greatly upsets residents nearby.
Yes, the hours that are suggested are very much the standard hours. So that's 8 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night, and then on Saturdays 8 o'clock in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, with no workings on Sundays or bank holidays. So that would be the standard condition, and we would expect the developer to comply with that.
Okay, thank you. No one else has indicated that they wish to ask questions, so can I now invite comments, please? Councillor Graham.
Just to say, I'm not sure about the aesthetics, but I will be supporting this application. The need for rented housing, social housing within Whitley Bay is great. For those who can't afford to buy a home, a rented home is the only hope of having a good quality home, and Places for People will supply this, I'm sure, although they will be quite small. We have only 70 socially rented homes within our ward, and to boost these by over 10% is to be welcomed, so I shall be supporting this application.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dark, your hand's still up. Do you want to make a comment?
Thank you.
Okay. Am I right in saying that no one else has indicated they wish to speak? Right, in which case we'll move to the vote again by the time-honoured manner of Dave conducting a roll call.
Okay. First of all, Councillor.
Sorry, Dave. I should add. The officer recommendation is to approve the application, subject to the conditions set out on pages 68 to 73. So, and you can all see the officer recommendation. So please continue, Dave.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barry.
For.
Councillor Brady. Councillor Brady. I think Councillor Brady's on mute. Is Councillor Brady there, please? I'll come back to Councillor Brady, if that's okay, Chair. Councillor Dark?
4.
Councillor Graham?
4.
Councillor Green?
4.
Councillor Johnson?
4.
Councillor Lott?
4.
Councillor Samuel?
I'm for, because on the basis of the report, my computer decided to shut itself down halfway through that debate, so I missed some of it. But on the basis of how I read the report, I was happy. So I'm for on that basis, if that's acceptable.
I think on that basis, I'll have to question the committee clerk and our legal section. If Councillor Samuel missed any part of the debate, I think his vote is invalid.
Yeah, the councillors would need to be present for the full discussion on that item for the vote to count. So
I thought I would mention it because they say my computer decided, it told me it was shut down without being asked.
Thank you for that, Councillor Samuel. Finally, Councillor Wheatman.
4.
Okay. Is Councillor Brady with us? No.
The fact of the matter is, we don't know when Councillor Brady left, not intentionally, but left the meeting.
Leave. Hello.
Hello, is that Councillor Brady?
I didn't leave. The buttons disappeared, so I could hear everything. I wasn't able to say anything. Sorry.
All right.
Okay, fine. Are you in favour of the application or against?
In favour of the application, yes.
Okay, Chair. So that's 8 in favour and none against.
Thank you very much. So that application is approved. Can I ask you now to turn to page 81, and that's item 9. No, it's not. It's 81. It's the Burton Abattoir. Is this Maxine or is it Julie?
It's Julie. It's Julie. Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to share my screen, and hopefully soon you'll be able to see the presentation.
Can I just check while you're getting the screen up that all members have received the addendum? If anyone hasn't, please speak.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So hopefully everyone can now see and hear me and see the item 3 on the screen there.
Yes.
Yeah, great. The site is an existing abattoir in Burradon. There is a road to the west. And to the north of the site are some fields. There's mature planting sited along the southern boundary of the site, part of the east and west boundaries, and also some more mature planting in that northeastern corner there. The nearest residential properties are Quarry Cottages, which are located to the east of the site, and the residential estate of Cheviot Grange, which is just off this image, is located to the southwest of the site down here. The site is within the green belt, and it's also within a wildlife corridor. The application, I'll just go on to the next slide. Sorry, I think the computer, oh, sorry there. I'll go back to where I was going to be. It was just a bit slow, I think. Just go back into that. There. The application is for an extension to the existing facility, which includes the demolition of an existing employee amenity block, construction of a welfare amenity building, some new offices, increased hard standing for vehicles connected with the development with the site, including truck and car parking, and a wastewater treatment facility. So what I've got on there is just shows you the existing site. And if it just take us back, this field here is this area here. So that's the existing site, that's the field there, and it shows the existing units, and that's the lairage there and the existing parking. What's proposed is car parking area in here, the waste treatment facility here, and extensions to the building. So the applicant has advised that the proposals for the truck and car parking, which are here, arise from a need to upgrade and improve efficiencies to help create environmental improvements, meet current and future hygiene expectations, improve the health and safety of staff and visitors, and to achieve industry best available techniques in production. And the car parking at the site is insufficient and not segregated, and there is no dedicated truck parking at the site. So I'll just take us through just some of the elevations. There's the existing north elevation, the existing and the proposed elevation there, just showing the alteration there. It'll be a bit clearer in a second when I come on to another plan. That's another elevation as existing and as proposed, key area around here. And just take us, sorry, it's been a bit slow, so I'm just going to leave it so it doesn't leap. Sorry, it seems to be stalling a bit. I'm just going to try and escape out of there. Sorry, my Citrix connection is closing down. I might ask Aidan to bring up his slides if he can, and I'll continue talking. So I've just lost the connection to what's known as Citrix, which brings up everything that I need to keep presenting. But hopefully you can still hear me. And Aidan, if you can hear me, can you bring up the slides and just go through the slides as I talk around them?
Yes, I will do, Julie. Just
thank you. Because I can still talk on this facility on Teams, but it's just I've lost everything else. Thank you.
Just let us know when that appears.
Yeah, it's appeared.
Does it appear with item 3?
Yeah, item 3, yes. So if you just go to the second of those long elevations, please, and I'll just keep talking. Yeah, stay on here, please. This shows the existing east elevation and the proposed, the first and second one down there, and the west elevations as well, the existing and proposed. So you can see the, especially indicated in red, part of the extension there as well. If you just go on the next slide, please.
Sorry, just bear with me.
Thank you. So these are just floor plans, so probably this and the next slide you can just go quickly through. Thank you. That's the first floor. This slide is useful because the top left there shows the existing 3D view and the other ones are proposed. So it's almost in two phases, this development. So if we look at the existing one at the top left compared to the top right, that shows their initial phase of the change there, which you can see. And then also a couple of views there at the bottom as well, which you can see the plans there, which show the extensions to the building. And you can just see on that bottom right one off to the left, the truck parking, which is in that little field to the north. Next slide, please. This is just a bit more detail on the one aspect of the development, which is that's great, thank you. That's the wastewater treatment facility, and the next slide, which is the last one for this presentation, that just shows a bit of that northern area where the car parking and this facility will go, but with some landscaping around it. So if we can go back to the aerial view, please, is probably the best one. Thank you. The main issues relate to the principle of the development, the impact on the green belt, impact on amenity, the impact on character and appearance, and highway safety. And in terms of the principle, I've mentioned that the existing site is within the green belt, and we've set out the relevant policies in the agenda. The application seeks to extend this established facility and extend the existing car parking and that wastewater treatment facility into a field located to the north of the existing car park. If you could just go back to the aerial view quite near the beginning of the presentation, please. Thank you. Planning permission was granted in 2019 for some further extensions to the building, and these previously approved extensions form part of the current planning application. So it's proposed to cover an existing settlement tank and pump wastewater to a dedicated modern treatment facility. The proposed car park and the wastewater treatment facility would be sited in that northern field, and the applicant has submitted that landscaping plan, which we've just seen, to demonstrate how the visual impact of this part of the proposal could be reduced. And except for the layerage, which is just to the right of where that mouse is there, all the extensions to the original building have been contained within the most southern part of the site. The extensions would be contained within this area and would utilise an area of existing hard stand. They wouldn't extend beyond the northernmost point of that existing layerage, and the alterations would enable this existing business to improve its current operations for both its product and staff. And having regard to the existing positioning of the building on site and the vegetation around the site, it's not considered that the increase in footprint or the increase in height, which is approximately 1.3 metres, would significantly impact on the openness of this part of the green belt. Views of the abattoir and the associated vehicles with the site can be seen from the surrounding public domain. This development would result in the increase in footprint and height of the building, as well as introduce that parking into that field to the north. But it's not considered that the impact on the openness of the green belt or the visual impacts will be significantly greater than that experienced at present. It would be seen in the context of an existing operational site. The existing mature planting and the proposed planting would assist in reducing that visual impact when viewed from outside the site. And so it's considered that the impacts on the openness of the greenbelt are acceptable. And we've set out as well the economic and operational benefits of the proposed development, which must be weighed against the impacts on the greenbelt. It would enable an existing facility to remain on an already established site. It's officer advice that it would be inappropriate development in the greenbelt, but that there are a range of very special circumstances that must be taken into account. And officers consider that these circumstances are capable of outweighing the potential harm to the characteristics of the greenbelt in relation to its openness and the aim of protecting the countryside from encroachment. And it's the view of officers that the principle of the development is acceptable. In terms of amenity, you can see quarry cottages there just to the right of the site. There's holiday lets as well further east beyond that. The residential properties of Cheviot Grange are to the southwest, just on the other side of Burradon Road, well, down by Burradon Road there. The applicant has advised that in accordance with best industry practice, all proposed structures are linked, thereby reducing the requirement to move from internal to an external area. So that reduces the associated opening and closing of the premises. It's proposed to address the main issues of odours arising from the current waste treatment facilities by means of a modern wastewater treatment plant, including the covering of the current settlement tank. And the Environment Agency, as we've seen in the addendum circulated at the end of last week, has no objections. Environmental Health's comments are set out. They've advised that the covering of the byproduct storage areas will help to mitigate any potential odours from this area. So it's officer advice that, subject to conditions, the impact on amenity is considered to be acceptable. In terms of impact on character and appearance of the area, and just generally amenity, Quarry Cottages, as we've said, is to the east of the site, and that the directly adjacent property, which is number 1 Quarry Cottages, is separated from the application site by an access road serving these properties. And due to the orientation of Quarry Cottages and their main garden areas and the existing vegetation, it's not considered that the proposed extensions, because of their siting or height, would significantly impact on the visual amenity of those neighbouring properties. And as we've said, there may be some views from around the site, but it would be viewed in the context of the existing operational buildings, and the design of the proposed extensions is in keeping with the existing form of the building. The parking and water treatment area. Can you go a couple of slides on, please, just to the proposed site plan? Just 2 slides down. That's great, that one, please. Thank you. The proposed parking area and wastewater treatment facility would be sited in the field to the north of the existing buildings. The applicant has indicated that they will add additional planting around the boundaries of that field to help reduce the visual impacts. On balance, it's not considered that the level of development in this area would significantly reduce the openness of this part of the green belt or result in significant visual intrusion. In terms of highway safety, current employees must park their cars within a very confined site, with all trucks entering the site having to manoeuvre a way around these. That includes the livestock trucks and any delivery and collection trucks. And the Highways Network Manager considers that the alterations to the current parking arrangement as proposed would meet the operational needs of this business, and he has recommended conditional approval. Just any other issues in terms of biodiversity, the site is within a wildlife corridor. The biodiversity officer has considered the submitted ecological appraisal. The site supports habitats that are of low conservation importance and which support a limited range of bird species and are of low importance for foraging and commuting bats. So she's advised that the submitted landscaping plan for the northern section of the site is acceptable to address the impacts of the wildlife corridor. And in conclusion, members need to determine that in terms of the principle of the development, its impact on the green belt, its impact on amenity, character and appearance of the area, and any other issues relating to highways and biodiversity. It's the view of officers that the development is acceptable subject to conditions, and approval is recommended subject to expiry of the consultation, which is the site and press notice on the 6th of August. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. No one's requested speaking rights, and I note that there aren't any objections to this application from members of the public. Can I now invite members of the committee to ask questions of officers? Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you. There's a lot in there about improvements for staff and improvements for lorries turning and so forth. Is there anything in there which actually improves the welfare of the animals prior to slaughter? Because that's a really important part when you're actually looking at extensions and things, please.
Thank you for that question. I'm just going back to the agenda sets out the supporting information by the applicant, and we've set out as well the planning history, which I think over time has sought to improve some of those aspects. I think what the applicant set out is just that these wider works. Yes, I mean it's part of it's about staff and odour and just trying to accord with industry best standards as well. In terms of the way the process operates. So I can't answer probably specifically in terms of animal welfare, but the wider works are sought to improve and just try and keep up with the standards, best practice for the industry, which would assumably help in terms of animal welfare.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
No one else has indicated that they wish to speak. Is that the case? In which case, can we move on to comments now? And if no one wishes, Councillor Green.
Yes, this is a much needed facility in the area. I would have liked to have heard something more about any improvements that they had made towards the welfare of the animals, because sometimes they stay overnight before slaughter, and it can be quite distressing for them. But with regard to the planning application here, and I'm pleased it's being allowed in the green belt, because I do think it's a very necessary facility, and I believe the facilities that are being proposed are necessary and appropriate. Thank you, Chair. I'll be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Quite confident now. No one else has indicated. The officer recommendation is that the committee indicate they're minded to approve the application subject to no objections being raised by the Environment Agency, and much more than that. So can we now move to the vote? I'll ask the clerk to call out the names of each member of the committee, please, and can you indicate either for or against?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barry?
For.
Councillor Brady?
For.
Councillor Dark?
For.
Councillor Graham?
For. And Dave, would you mind checking on the last vote to see if I was in the meeting for the whole of the discussion, just from what Councillor Samuel had said, because I lost connection too.
Right,
Thank
okay,
you.
okay. Councillor Green?
For.
Councillor Johnson? Councillor Johnson?
Are you on mute, Councillor Johnson? Move on, Dave.
Okay. Councillor Lott?
For.
Councillor Samuel?
For.
And Councillor Wheatman?
For.
You go back to Councillor Johnson? No? So we think he's on mute. So anyway,
Councillor Johnson, one last attempt to contact you. Are you on mute?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, I had been saying yes, and then I pressed the button on my microphone, but it didn't contribute on the screen. Yes, for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's nine in favour, none against.
Right, so that application's approved. Can we move now to page 113, I think it is, for item 9, Management Suite Royal Keys Outlet.
Thank you, Chair, and Aidan, thank you if you just keep on doing the slides again as you are. Thank you. The application, if you go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. The application relates to part of the car park which serves the Royal Keys Outlet Shopping Centre. It's located in Cobledene, to the east of an inflatable theme park and to the north of the existing hotel, Premier Inn Hotel. To the southeast is a public house. Yeah, next slide, please. Thank you. That was great. To the southeast is a public house, and the area contains a variety of uses, including a water park and bowling alley. Next slide, please. The application is for outline planning permission for a hotel and associated car parking. All matters are reserved for subsequent approval, so all we're assessing is the principle of the development. The applicant has indicated that it will be a 3-storey hotel and contain approximately 70 bedrooms. Next slide, please. The main issue for members to consider are the principle of the proposal, the impact on surrounding occupiers, the impact on the character and appearance of the site and its surroundings, whether there is sufficient car parking and access provided, and the impact on trees and ecology. In terms of the principle of the development, the site is an out-of-centre location. It's within the River Tyne North Bank area. The hotel is identified as a main town centre use within the National Planning Policy Framework, and a sequential assessment has been submitted with the application. This considers alternative sites within and on the edge of existing centres of Wallsend and North Shields, and no sequentially preferable sites or buildings that were suitable, available and viable were found. The proposal would support economic growth, contribute to job creation, and it would capitalise on the economic opportunities of the ferry terminal and the Royal Keys Marina. And it's officer opinion that the principle of the proposal is acceptable. In terms of impact on surrounding occupiers, the application site is located within a predominantly commercial area. Surrounding the application site, as I've mentioned, are leisure facilities, another hotel and a public house with a shopping centre to the west. The closest residential properties are over 300 metres to the northwest and about 300 metres to the east. Environmental Health have no objections to the proposal subject to conditions, so the impact on general amenity is considered to be acceptable. You can see on that slide there the existing Premier Inn hotel. That's about 25 metres from the rear elevation of the proposed hotel. Whilst there would be some impact on outlook from the northeast facing windows of the Premier Inn, it's not considered that this would result in significant harm to the business. In terms of character and appearance, next slide please. And the one after that please. Yeah, that one, thank you. The application is an outline with all matters reserved, so appearance and scale would be reserved for future approval. An indicative site layout has been submitted, which you've just seen, to demonstrate how the site could be developed to accommodate a hotel and parking. And the indication is that it will be a 3-storey hotel, and these are indicative street elevations, just showing, you can see the existing and the proposed there, and what it would look like. The application site is located in an area characterised by large commercial buildings. The adjacent hotel is 3 storeys and there's a 6-storey office building to the northwest. So in this context, a 3-storey building is considered to be acceptable. And the indicative site layout shows that the site is of an adequate size to accommodate the hotel, with space remaining for car parking to the rear. Can you go on the previous slide, please, Aidan? Whether there is, in terms of car parking and access, again, the application is an outline with all matters reserved, so the layout would be considered under a future approval, and the final car and cycle parking is to be finalised with any future reserved matters. The Highways Network Manager has no objections to the principle of the development. He advises that whilst some parking spaces would be lost as a result of the development, previous parking surveys have demonstrated that the remaining car park would be sufficient to meet the needs of the existing and proposed uses. In terms of trees and ecology, the site is a tarmac car park with some shrubs and trees on it. The landscape architect has no objections subject to conditions, and the biodiversity officer has stated that it is likely that the proposal may impact the coast as a result of additional recreational disturbance, so a financial contribution is required in line with the Coastal Mitigation SPD, and the developer has agreed to make that contribution. And landscaping is a reserved matter, so that would cover any future landscaping for the site under a future reserved matters application. So Section 106 contributions have been agreed as set out for ecology and employment and training. In conclusion, the proposal would secure economic growth and contribute to job creation, and the impact of the proposal is considered to be acceptable, so it's recommended for approval subject to a Section 106 and conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. No one's asked for speaking rights, so we can move to questions now. Councillor Samuel, your hand's up. Is that a hangover from the last application, or would you like to ask a question?
I'm pleased to report. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, happy to report I have no hangover. My concern really is about trees, which is always, and you did go into that a little bit there, Julie. But it mentions in the report that to be a minimal impact to small trees. Could you maybe just expand on that a little bit? Because I'm all in my, particularly because it's an indicative application, I'm always worried when we start talking about removing trees.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I will. Probably easiest actually just showing you on this plan. Probably sorry, the image that's up there. It's about just some smaller amenity planting, I guess is what you would call it, trees in this area. But the landscaping to go back in would be controlled under a future application. So it would need reserve matters planning application to control any future proposed planting scheme for the site, and the landscape architect has advised that subject to obviously that future application, she's happy with what's proposed in terms of the development.
So in summary, basically, we've got another bite of the cherry when the final application comes in.
I mean, this is only to establish the principle of the development on the site. So the principle is considered to be acceptable, but the layout where the hotel would sit on the site, how big it would be, what it would look like, and any proposed landscaping scheme would be controlled under a reserve matters application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
I know it's only an indicative application and necessarily it's not really a point for this application. But Dave, is that access still suitable with the additional traffic? It's obviously fine since they built the dome place that you can see there. They've changed the access there and it's not great, but because there's not much volume of traffic going down into that car park at the moment, it's fine. Will that still be suitable once if this new development gets built there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of affected. Obviously, Cobblestone itself is a dual carriageway, which is probably more than actually needed for that area. So there's ample capacity and what have you in there. And the small mini roundabout within the site, it works for any vehicles that need to go around there. So
sorry,
I'm
David,
quite happy with that.
It's the access. You can see the narrow strip in the middle of those two red boxes. That access there into the car park itself is not particularly great now. They've changed it. It goes around on a weird angle when you get into it. I just wonder if that's going to still be appropriate. It's the bit right in the middle where the thin strip is, yeah, there. Just a question, will that still be appropriate if we're adding additional traffic in there? Because I've seen at times, particularly on a Friday evening when people are heading to the Brewers Fair Public House ahead of the ferry, that gets quite bad around an evening time. So I don't know if we had an additional hotel there, whether that would still be appropriate or not. Indicative.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I don't have the width there, but when you compare with the parking bays, it does look quite substantial. It looks a good 7 meters or so. So I think it will work within the site, and I have no issues with that. I mean, what I can do is when the reserve matters comes in, I can get them to do the appropriate swept path analysis of the servicing vehicles, which we would anyway. And I think if they do progress to that stage of the application, I'd certainly be able to answer that with more certainty to them.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much, Dave.
Okay.
Right, thank you for that. Any further questions? If not, any comments, please? Councillor Johnson's hand still up.
Just hadn't taken it down yet, Chair.
All right. Well, as a ward councillor for Riverside Ward, I can comment that there are no objections from any of the ward councillors, and it's pleasing to note that the North Shields Chamber of Commerce have expressed their conditional support, subject to one or two clauses. So I'll be voting in favour. Does any other member wish to comment? There are no indications, so the officer recommendation is that the committee indicate we're minded to grant this application subject to the conditions set out on pages 124 to 132 of the committee papers. So Dave, could you do the roll call, please?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Barry.
For.
Councillor Brady.
For.
Councillor Dark.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Green.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
Councillor Lott.
For.
Councillor Samuel.
For.
And Councillor Wheatman.
For.
So that's 9 in favour and none against.
So that application is approved. Thank you very much for that. That concludes today's meeting. Can I thank officers for their perseverance in working through the technical difficulties we've experienced, and office and members for their understanding while we waded through treacle at times. So thanks very much for your participation. If the committee is to meet physically in the future, and that's subject to your responses, could I ask either Dave or Michael on his return from leave to chase up the issue of the large screen that we've requested, which I think has been approved, but someone's supposed to be carrying out an acquisition for it. Okay, thank you all very much.
Yeah,
and cheerio.
Chair, can I just ask one question? I mean, it's not for the public part of this meeting, but I have.
Can we switch the feed off?